Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. You are in the 70DU webinar on independent research projects. And tonight we're going to talk about how you can get ahead with an independent research project. My name is Laura Stevens, and I am going to just tell you a few things before we get underway with our panelists. Here's our agenda for tonight. So let's meet our panelists. We have Dr. Yan, and she is a tenured college professor, former postdoc at Stanford, and data scientist at Coursera. She served on the editorial boards of several international journals. She has published over 40 articles in peer-reviewed top-tier journals, conference proceedings, and books. Dr. Yan is a PhD in bioengineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology, postdoc at Emory, postdoc at Emory University and Stanford University. She has authored 27 high-impact journal publications with more than 3,500 citations, 6 book chapters, and has edited 1 book. Also with us tonight is Mr. Julian. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Humanities and Engineering from MIT. He had a joint major in Environmental Engineering and Science, Technology, and Society. He has extensive research experience in environmental science, engineering design, ecology, epidemiology, astronomy, and civil engineering. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Yan, and we will get started.
Thank you, Laura, for the introduction, and thank you for all the students, parents joining us tonight. Okay, so first of all, let's define what is an independent research project. And I believe that all students have done projects at the school, right? So how is that the independent research project different from the school projects you have done so far? So here we define independent research project as an opportunity for students to undertake a scientific investigation of your own design. Although we are targeting high school students, but we do have students like younger than maybe middle school or younger, and who are interested in doing independent research. So the goal of our independent research project is to help students further develop science literacy beyond what you the knowledge that you think, okay, and then maybe your school teacher tell you that, wow, this is a course project, and then with a goal already defined. But here, each young mentors will learn firsthand the process of designing and implementing an original scientific investigation from beginning to end. In fact, all the students will come up with their own project ideas, and of course, we will guide you through the process. It is a very challenging process to define a well-scoped research project. Like later on, we will give some examples. Okay, so what's the benefits of completing an independent research project? You know, every time we spend some time and spend effort doing things outside of school, we want to see what are the benefits of doing so. So if we think of practical reasons, and doing an independent project really help you to stand out in large admission applications, highly selective schools. Now we know that all students, if your goal is to reach the very high selective schools, you will take most rigorous courses at your high school. But I think your peers will also do that, right? And you know that you have to do very well in standard tests, including SAT, ACT, and AP, but your peers will also do that. So how can we demonstrate your uniqueness? And in fact, in our past college application seminars, and we have been discussing what's the trend and what schools are looking for. Schools are looking for students who can take initiative, who have the determination, and who can show creativity. So these are the softer skills. But how can you demonstrate those softer skills? The one way of doing that is to conduct an independent research project. Okay, so so you can see some of the bullet point here, and while doing the project, and you can also learn some of the things that outside schoolwork, and then probably you. Sometimes you may need to even go back to review the things you learned in the past. You think maybe you have forgotten those earlier topics, but you need those you need knowledge for your project, and then you have to go back to review the things that you learned in the past, or more likely you actually have to learn new things. the things that you have not learned at the school. And this is another way of to show that you take the initiative, and then you have a goal, and then you take initiative and effort to move toward that goal. Okay, so I will invite Julian to share with us and the benefit that he thinks to have complete an independent research project at high school.
Thank you. So alongside the ability to have this on your college applications, make yourself much more of a standout applicant, there's also a added benefit of when you actually make it to college and university, you're going to be doing research as part of your, not only your bachelor's degree, but even if you decide to go further than that, then this independent research project during high school gives you enough of a background to go into that already sort of knowing what to do when it comes to doing research. So while you can learn while you're getting your degree how to do proper research, having a background in it makes it so much easier to jump into it, be ready for it, look out for opportunities to do more research, further your education just within what you've already been doing before, and prepare yourself for the workforce, academia afterwards, whatever you intend to do.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, for the sharing. And the one thing I want to add on is that most of schools do require students to declare major when you apply for the university. And so when you declare major, and beyond advanced courses you may have taken at a school, and doing research project is another way of demonstrate that you are really interested in the topic. You really want to know more, to the point that you want to take on a research project. Typically, research projects are done by graduate students, not even undergrad students. But now we're offering the opportunity for high school students to have that experience. And then maybe by doing the research project, you can further your understanding of the topic, which may or may not tell you that's the direction you want to go. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. What are some examples of research topics? And Laura has introduced our panelists, and based on our mentors' experience, you can see that we have research mentors, Dr. Yun and Julian, who are experts in biological science, engineering, environmental science, engineering design. We also have other mentors who can help students with computer science projects, social science, and even history projects. Yeah, so it's not just for STEM, although the panelists today are STEM representatives, but we do have teachers who can help students with non-STEM research projects. Yeah, so if you're not sure whether we can help you with the research topics, or you think you have research topics that do not fit into the bullet points here, then feel free to reach out to us, because we, just for the space, for the sake of space, we didn't list all the topics that students can work on for the research topics. These are probably the most popular, but still very generic. Okay, so this is a question we always asked by parents and students. When should you start? And although the examples we will give today mostly are high school students projects, basically you can start anytime in high school and starting from G9 and above. And if your goal is to finish a project by the time we apply for college, and then you can include that experience either in your essay or in your activity list. However, it's not, we are not saying that you have to be a high school student to do a project. Okay, so for that, I would like to invite Dr. Yun to share her experience and helping or coaching students at different grade levels.
Well, thank you, Dr. Yan. I started coaching students since last summer, and I have 4 students so far. And one was a senior when she started with me. I think there are 2 juniors and 1 sophomore. So I think the senior, when she started, she was very interested just doing research because she already has some research background. And she was actually very interested in Alzheimer's disease, very specific interest. And then the junior at that time, she wasn't quite sure. And so we went through some, went through some topics, and she picked something in microbiology. And then I had another one working on crops and fertilizer, and the current one who's interested in energy drinks.
And I know Julie, ranging from middle schoolers to high schoolers. So Julian, do you want to share this thought, like when you think students should start with your research projects?
Right now. Well, probably not right this second, but definitely as soon as possible. You could even say that, in a sense, you've already started doing your research project. Students already naturally have interests that they kind of gravitate towards, and those kind of develop really early in childhood. As they go through school, their interests kind of change and shift. But interests that the student might have right now could already serve as really good jumping points for trying to find out what they want to research. Or even if they're not something that they want to continue down with researching, then that just means that it's a topic that they know, okay, this I don't have to look at, so I can look at something else. And that's already good progress made towards deciding on what to do. And once you're done with that, it's already the first step done.
In the past, when we guided students with projects, we always ask them, what are interested in working on? And some students actually had trouble figuring that out at that moment. But if you, every time when you thought something that, when you think of something that you can improve, either is in the community or in your small community or actually in the society or things around you, you may be able to do a research project on it. Yeah, you don't have to do something that will bring some breakthrough impact. We don't expect that from a high school student. If you think you want to do a serious research and to figure out whether your idea is feasible or not, and you can talk to us. But whenever you have a thought and you want to move forward, you need to have a plan. You need to have a plan on the timeline on how long it will take you to do the project. Some project involves data collection, and it may take quite long, like even a few months or even half a year to collect the data that you need. So what do you need to begin to begin the research project? Obviously, the prerequisites that we need. So the first thing that you need to have an interest in the topic, the things that you really truly care about. That something can be related to your future career goals, or you want to study biological science, or you want to be a computer scientist. And naturally, you want to choose a topic that's related to those career directions, or something that you simply want to know more about, especially for students who are still in the exploring stage. While high school students, especially for the freshman and sophomore, you may not know what you want to do for the future. Okay, that's quite common and quite understandable. You have a big world before you, right? You don't have to, fully settled on what you need to do. But how would you know whether this is really something that is interesting? So you need to study and to learn more about it by doing some research. Having said that, for some topics, for some research topics, you do need some background knowledge. For example, in a medical, if you do a biomedical engineering project, now of course you need some basic biology knowledge. If you do data science, you need math knowledge. Right? So some background knowledge it will be helpful depending on the topic. Also, maybe there's knowledge is needed when you need to collect data and analyze the data. But the next three things are more personal, more like personal traits, personality traits. For us to be successful in any things any challenges we want to face or any pursuit we want to go forward. We need to be motivated with the things we want to do. We need to be self-disciplined, and especially with focusing on the things that we need to task we need to complete in order to move forward with the project. And also doing research. One of the main reasons why a student having a research experience is very attractive to college is that we know that doing project has some risk, and unlike doing a test, because when you do a test, there's a correct answer, right? And our goal is to go toward that correct answer, and if you don't get a correct answer, you get it wrong. But if you have the knowledge, if you already you know the steps that you should follow in order to get a correct answer, and then probably you will get a correct answer. But doing research actually has some risk. You may not get the results that you want. Or you may have a hypothesis, but later on your data actually show the hypothesis was incorrect. So what we do, right? So but you have to have the willingness to learn, to go through the process. And the time management is very, very important, because we do have students who don't follow the design timeline and then end up falling behind. Yeah, so we have to, usually when we give a student a timeline to work on the project, and we encourage them to stay on the timeline so that they can finish the project in time, especially for junior and seniors, rising seniors. If your goal is to finish the project by the time you apply for college, and then you have to make sure that you hit the milestone based on the projected timeline.
My experience is that I think most very important point is already listed here. I do believe that time management is very important because high school students have a very busy schedule. Sometimes they have, multiple APs and other extracurriculars. I sometimes have assignment of reading literature and writing, and some of my students have trouble finishing. And yes, you have to be very motivated. You have to be interested in the topic, something you picked, not something. If you're not passionate about it, you will lose interest. You cannot, you cannot finish it, because you just don't feel like that much. And also, if you are good at writing, that will be very helpful.
I could definitely second the need to be genuinely interested in what you do when you're beginning, just so that it makes it a lot easier to create a schedule, stick to a schedule, and not necessarily feel like you're never working while you do the research, but actually enjoying it to the point where you're doing the work, you're enjoying the work, and when you're finished, might even have that drive to continue with it, start another projects, or just focus on it for a good chunk of your life, at the very least, maybe like a college degree.
Yeah, so what if a student comes to you and saying that he or she doesn't know what she wants to do, or she doesn't have a particular topic in mind? And what would you say to the student, Julian?
So whenever a student doesn't really know what they want to focus on, we essentially just focus on focusing a topic down. So we start really broad. We just go over what STEM is, what the humanities are, all the different fields in them. And based off of that, we ask for any initial interests. Is there anything that's even just a tiny bit something they want to dig further into? As when you start with those really broad fields and ideas, you can really start to narrow down into, okay, this field might be interesting. What about it is? And we go down and down until we narrow it down to one specific topic, one specific question that they can actually focus on with research.
Yeah, that's very relevant to many students we have encountered. So not all students come to us with a dedicated topic in mind. Most of students actually don't. And so what we usually do is to help them narrow down the topic or send them some example articles written by high school students or even professionals, well, depending on the understanding level of the students. Yeah, so we find articles or research papers for them to read, topics that they actually can work on, that can make some positive impact, or to solve some problems that relevant to the current society. Yeah, so just like brainstorming when you write an essay, right? If you don't know what to write, and we do brainstorming and helping students identify a topic that potentially interesting to them, and then they go deeper and they will know more about the topic. And most of the time when they know more about the topic, they will become more interested in the topic. Okay, so what are the main challenges? But doing a research project is not always the easiest thing that you can take on. Inquiry can be very challenging, but for the same reason, like I mentioned several times, it's for the same reason, because the challenges the student have to overcome to complete an independent research project. And that makes them really stand out during the college application process.
I think, yes, I agree with the point that it's very important to have a well-defined project. I do have one student who came in really wasn't sure what she wanted to do. So what I use, there was 2 online, more like a questionnaire. So they have a list of questions and ask your background and your strength and also your interests. And based on that, they will give you a recommended list of kind of projects you can work on. So I think they give us about 50 or something. So from that list, and she picked several projects. I asked her to pick a few and to take a look. And then the next time we met and asked her, whether she already picked one. And we also discussed about whether it's practical. What's your timeline and what's your goal, right? You want a project that's feasible, that can be completed in your time frame. So I think that's very important when your student want to do a project in you have a certain time limit. You have to take that into consideration. Especially for people who want to do biological science, a huge part of biological science, it's experimental. So we do, because most of the time we do remote in tutoring, right? So if you do want to do experimental project, you have to make sure you have access to supplies, equipment and stuff. And that will probably add in more time in there. So these are the kind of things to consider. And I kind of agree with the bullet list on here, like reading, understanding, and scientific literature is a must. You have to understand that. And being able to work independently without someone, going after you all the time. And that's very important. Yeah.
We do have one question in the Q&A. How do you help students carve time out from their busy schedule to do an IRP?
I think so. Whoever asked the question, maybe student parent, is maybe the students it's already overloaded with a lot of things that other things the students working on. Yeah. So, but in that case, you probably have to plan a little bit longer time frame. If you do, you cannot dedicate, like for example, the like few months and spending say about 10 hours working on a project. Then for some projects you need just to think a bit longer term. You probably cannot finish within 1 or 2 months, right? And it may last you 5 or 6 months. Yeah, so we do cater the student the project scope as well as on how much time the student can spend each week working on the project. And they help them design a time frame that can work for the student schedule. And for projects that involve data collection, actually lasts quite long. Sometimes you have to wait if you need to grow some bacteria, and then you have to wait, right? And or if you run a survey, and then you really have to wait till you have enough responses to start data collection. Yeah. So when we design the project, we have to have a timeline designed ahead of time. At least we have projected timeline. We don't tell you, okay, sorry, you cannot finish the project within a month because we didn't think that you will be that busy. We do talk to students and figure out how much time they can spend on the project. And probably we can also adapt the scope of the project depending on the student's schedule. Maybe some type of projects is not feasible depending on because the student's too busy. Yeah, so it's not like we have one a checklist that student can check mark and then see the student can finish the project. It starts from defining the project topic first. Yeah, that's why it's so important. This is the very first step that we need to help a student to define a well-defined and feasible research topic.
I think definitely the biggest thing is just being able to stick with it throughout the entire time, because these are things that you can't sit down and do in a week, in a month. It is something you have to stick with longer term. So keeping that in mind and being able to break it down into smaller, more digestible chunks of time also really helps make it a lot more easier to get through the entire thing. Instead of stressing and thinking about the final paper for the entire process, you can think about, okay, right now I just need to finish my literature review. Right now, I just need to finish designing my experiment. And that really helps make it a lot more easier to deal with the fact that this is a very long-term commitment.
Okay, so yeah, I know that we have received a couple more questions, but usually in the past, parents and students will ask us what kind of projects student can do and get published if our goal is to publish the student projects. And these are some selected recent student project publications. So the 4 papers actually were guided by our research mentors, but done by high school students. They were all published in professional journals, not high school journals. But we do make recommendations on what type of journal the student can publish. For smaller scale projects, we can start with publishing them in high school journals. But for students who have done deeper enough, they have reached a certain depth for the project and for the contribution, and we can help them to get published in professional journals. And we also have 3 papers which have been submitted and currently under review. 1 in a high school journal and 2 in professional journals. And we are actively at supervising or mentoring students. Currently we are supervising 12 independent research projects. Okay, so now we come to the slide and how can 7EDU help students to complete a successful project or gain the research experience and that they can write into your essay or they can be very proud of. So the 3 panelists, the experts you see in the panelists are experienced researchers, and we have other experienced researchers and who cannot join the seminar today. But our mentors are experienced researchers with a solid track record of publication. We are not PhD students, or we are not a students who are working on our own dissertation on our project. We know how to, we completed our own project and have our own publications. We have guided students through doing successful projects and helping them get published. So we do understand the hurdles that students have to encounter, and then we provide all the resources that we can to help a student to reach their goal. And we teach students actually a systematic approach to conducting research, so that if they have done a project completely, they actually can apply the same approach into doing other projects. Yeah, so we teach students the methodology and the approach, and then they can adapt that to other projects they want to take on later on in high school or even in college. We also tailor to student individual interests and knowledge skill levels. Like I said earlier, and usually the first thing we talk to students to figure out what the students are interested in, not what we want them to work on. And we do understand that the passion and interests are the inner drive to help the students to overcome the hurdles during the process. Yeah, so the interests have to come from the within, not outside. And also depending on the student existing prior knowledge related to the topic, and we help them to scope down or scope up depending on the levels that they can reach. But of course, that we need to consider of the research project if they win sphere as a result of the research project. Yeah, so the type of projects we help them to decide will depend on the ultimate goal of doing the project. Not all research need to be published. And also for students who have done successful projects, we do provide letters of recommendation. In fact, Dr. Wing wrote a recommendation letter for one of our students who got into Brown just for this application year. Yeah, so for students who have done successful projects, we're more than happy to write recommendation letters for their application for summer camps, for schools or for universities. And on the right, you can see our past students who have completed an independent research project and have been admitted into some top schools, including Princeton, Brown, Cornell, UCLA, UCB, and the USC.
First of all, how many projects can one student complete during 4 years of high school?
Oh, okay. So here we are balancing between quantity and the quality, right? Just like actually receive similar questions a lot, right? How many activities students have to participate in high school, or how many AP students have to take, how many clubs the student have to join. So here, I think the same principle applies. Quality is more important than quantity. So depending on the purpose of the project, and we know that high school students who have done research project can participate in science fair. And also, if our goal is to reach a professional journal, if to get published in professional journal, and then we need to have enough depth in order to get that level. It also depends on how much time the student can spend working on the project. I really cannot give you a number. It depends on a lot of other factors, and also the goal of having a publication. Now, I can tell you, if you only have one publication and publish in Nature, I think all the university will open their arms to you. Yeah. You don't have to write 10 articles, but all published in high school journals. And of course, publishing high school journals will actually make the students stand out because very few students actually publish. But it's not on the same scale, having only one publication in the top journal. Yeah, so here quality is more important than the quantity.
What are the deliverables of the project publications? So is the publication the deliverable, or what all is?
Okay, yeah, I
completed at the
can.
end?
Yes, yeah, I understand. Yeah, so I can share on my behalf my experience, and I think Dr. Wing can share as well. So depending on the type of project, it's more practical type of project. The student have a problem in mind and they come up with a solution or do some data analysis without much enough literature review, and that probably is a science fair project. But the student does have to go through the entire research process. But for publication, you really have to have enough literature review. So depending on whether the student really wants to spend time reading literature and then writing the literature review part. Yeah, so again, it's catered to the student goal and the timeline. Yeah, and also depending on like the when the student started the project, right? So if a student started project in senior year, and then probably we don't have enough time to get paper published. And I think Dr. Yu actually mentioned a student she helped in senior, started doing project in senior actually in August or September, but the student actually wanted to join a science fair. Yeah, at that time, because there was not enough time to get publication before she applied for college. Yeah, so again, we will work with students and to find what's the ultimate goal the student want to achieve. Yeah, winning a science fair, especially the highly selected ones, actually carries a very high value. You don't have to always publish that.
And here's another question. If the student needs a lab for their project, can 70DU help with getting access to a lab?
I think we can give some recommendations to the some local labs, and that student can go, but we don't physically own a lab where can student do the project. And also probably sometimes we need to be very creative with the project student need to do, and you don't always need a very advanced lab in order to do projects. We can tell you what supplies that you can buy at home to do the project. Yeah. Of course, that has some certain restriction on what type of project you can do. Okay, I help students with a data science project and definitely don't need a lab. You just need a computer. Then you can do a data science project. But both Dr. Wien and Julian help students with for biology or bioengineering projects. Yeah, probably they can.
So when I did a couple of my projects, actually back at MIT, even though we had access to plenty of state-of-the-art labs, we didn't actually need them. So whenever you're designing a project, I usually want to consider the time scale, the amount of other resources that you want put in alongside time. So that's access to materials, access to tools. And a lot of the time, like Dr. Yan said, all you really need is a computer. And there's, maybe a library too, a computer and a library. So a lot of the time, that really is all that you truly need to finish a project. There are examples where you probably do need access to a lab, but there are ways to kind of shorten down either the scope of the project or kind of extrapolate something you can do at home to something that you could do at a lab. So if you have a strong enough chain of reasoning or logic, then you can pretty easily tie something together up at home that is comparable in quality to something that you could do in a lab.
I think STEM is a very broad concept. So a lot of STEM projects you can do on the computer, even including biological science. So the senior student I had last summer, she was interested in Alzheimer's, and she finally decided on a project, computer modeling of small molecule drugs that may inhibit the development of Alzheimer's disease, which is completely on the computer, and she downloads the software, which was free. So basically she was doing drug discovery and as a high school student. She was pretty good, and she got a lot of data. But then there's another kind of a study, like I mentioned, I have a student who picked macrobiology. So for this kind of experiment, you do need access. Well, access to some kind of supplies, but you don't necessarily need a lab. So what she did, she wanted to test the antibacterial activities of vegetables and fruits. That's where she said she was interested in that. So what we did, we just, she purchased some petri dishes from Amazon, which, very easy to get it. And so collect some bacteria from her house, and she used doorknobs at the counter in the bathroom. She grew them in at home. So I taught her how to sterilize stuff, use your kitchen stuff. Like normally in the lab, you have something called autoclave, which are high pressure, high temperature equipment to kill bacteria. So I asked, do you have a pressure cooker? So we use her pressure cooker to sterilize, and we do some verification to make sure that's effective. So I think we got some very interesting results, because she found like apples are pretty good at killing bacteria, and bell pepper and stuff. So it's possible. It's but you be prepared. You need some supplies, and which mostly available from, you can get it from some small companies or Amazon.
Great. Here's another question. I've heard many students are doing IRPs. How do you help students stand out with their own IRP?
I think colleges do know the level of interest that you can, the passion that you demonstrate through doing a independent research project, and also the level of the involvement in the project. And then, so I think this ultimately is how you present yourself and the quality of research you do. And of course, we hope all students have the opportunity to explore their interests and having the opportunity to do research projects. But we do know that there's certain level, there's differences in the quality or the level of the depth that student can do with the independent research project. And the college knows that as well. Right? So we have students who have done research project and are able to write that experience in the essay. And we have students who can publish in journals. We also have students doing successful project to win award in science fair. It's the level of achievement they can reach, not whether they have done the project or not. I think just similar to other things the students do. And we have students who, we encourage students to join different clubs and to have the leadership skill. But all students know that, right? And we know that students need to have some leadership skill in order to apply for top selective colleges. But they reach different levels of leadership. Yeah. So our goal is to help a student to carry on the project, and then to demonstrate their ability through this process, and that they can further advance their understanding of the topic, and that can reassure them they really like this topic, they really like this direction.
Great. Here's another question. Can you give an example of a non-STEM IRP?
It really depends on what your definition of non-STEM could be. When I did my dissertation for my bachelor's degree for the humanities half of it, I wrote about the political side of the COVID-19 pandemic and how people viewed like mask wearing and vaccines. And even though there is science behind, masks, vaccines, COVID-19, the focus of the project was definitely more on the sociology side. You can write about really almost anything that would be academic. You could go for sociology, you could go for history, you could go for countless things that sometimes dip their toes into STEM, sometimes stay entirely in the humanities side. but there's really no limit to what you can research outside of STEM. And there's also no limit to what you can research that kind of combines the two together.
And this question is, can the student who is a current 8th grader start the project in the summer before high school?
Yeah, of course. I think we, like I said, all the panelists mentioned that you can start anytime. You don't have to be in a high school. And in fact, whenever you have some problem you have in mind or the things that you want to improve, and you can run a research project. And we actually see more and more middle schoolers doing projects. In fact, last year we helped several students, like middle schoolers, and to do a research project and then submit to the 3M Youth Challenge program. They are middle school science competitions actually, which encourage students, like even middle school students, to start thinking of doing research. During the process, of course, they can learn more about the subject. And also, probably that's a good opportunity for you to start exploring the different directions, so that maybe in high school, you already know what you want to study and what you want to do for your career or the things that interest the most. Yeah, for sure. The answer is yes. But of course, we will have to talk to the student to figure out what type of projects that interest you and then what prior knowledge you already have to help you to come up with a project that you can work on.
This QR code will allow you to sign up for our newsletter. So if you want to take a quick little scan of that, and the newsletter is a great way to keep up with all the upcoming webinars and free classes and news and articles and things. So I'll give you all a minute here. If you've got your camera handy, if you don't have your camera handy, you can also visit our website and sign up for the newsletter, 7edu.org. If you want to stay connected, this QR code will take you to our Facebook and our YouTube accounts. And so you can capture that real quick. And again, that's also on our website. And then for assistance with courses, whether you're interested in IRP or any other courses, you can contact Autumn via email info@7edu.org.
Yeah, so basically we will get some basic information about the students and then to make a recommendation on what kind of IRP courses that best for the students.